Hi. I want to say a big thank you for taking the time to watch this. Even if you dip in and out, everything is appreciated. I've been talking about extreme breeding pretty much for the last 25, 30 years since I qualified as a vet. And we've tried various things over the years to try and make a difference to animal welfare when it comes to extreme breeding. But actually, it's you, the pet buying or acquiring people, that can make the biggest difference. And I'd really love to talk about that today. So this seems really obvious, but even when I talk to vets and nurses all over the world, this is how I always start my talks, because I think it's really easy, even for vets and nurses, but it's really easy for all of us to we're so used to what these animals look like, these breeds that we've made, that we forget what evolution and survival of the fittest have picked. And when you look, I know I've got a picture of a rabbit there as well, but it's because we've done this to lots of species, but when you look at canids and felids around the world, that's wild dogs and cats, the ancestors of our sort of current pets. They tend to have very similar attributes. They've got long, straight legs, they've got long muzzles, short fur, even where they live in cold climates like the snow leopard and things like the Arctic wolf. They have long tails, they have open, unimpaired vision, and they tend to have erect ears. And where you see street dogs or dogs where they're surviving, they'll usually have semi-erect or erect ears. So extreme conformation, what is it? It's basically, breeds don't exist in nature, and lots of people don't realise that. They're a completely man-made concept. So we started to select animals for hunting, herding and guarding and so on. And then over the years, particularly since showing and the kennel clubs have come along, we've made these breeds, and we've kind of introduced new ones, and now we've got lots of different dog breeds that we're all used to seeing, and they're very physically different. And some of them have been stretched really to these extremes now, where their bodies are starting not to work at all. So it's really important to understand that that breeds do not exist in nature. You'll sometimes have slight geographical variations in, that dictate slightly different types of animals in the same species. But what we've done is absolutely unprecedented. It might sound melodramatic, but I really honestly believe that this is physical suffering that is as tangible as physical abuse. And I don't think there's many places in the world that would allow you to beat an animal on a daily basis. But some of the pain and suffering that we've caused by these body forms is definitely unnecessary physical suffering. So I want to look at that. But I also want to have a look at overall sort of health, as in mental health, physical health, emotional health, and so on, because I think it really does affect all of that for these animals. So there's quite a few things that we've changed about all of these species, but obviously mainly I'm talking about dogs, cats and rabbits. Excessive skin, I think, is often overlooked because lots of these photos are shared as cute, or Shar-Peis classically were always used in kind of skincare ads and so on, where people are worried about getting wrinkly, but we don't seem to mind inflicting it on animals. But the problem is that when you fold furred skin, and any of you who've had problems with obesity or that kind of thing, if you have skin folds, you'll know that you get this sort of moist infected skin in there. And I think for animals it's quite difficult, because unless caregivers are actually opening those skin folds, like you see this tail at the bottom there, or pulling open these ones on the cheeks, you quite often don't see how inflamed the skin is in there. And that will be quite a chronic source of pain and inflammation. So Shar-Peis obviously are the poster child for this, but Neapolitan Mastiffs nowadays, lots of breeds have skin folds on their face that are desired by the breed standard. And some of these dogs, like the Mastiff you can see there in the picture, have got these huge, massive loads of skin. It affects their eyes, it affects how well their lips work. They'll always sort of joke about how slobbery they are, but that's because their lips are dysfunctional. And some of these dogs have to have massive facelifts where they have huge, like a plate's worth of skin taken off the top of their head just to try and give them a functional face. So yeah, avoid dogs with skin folds, and cats. Long backs and short legs. I was absolutely mortified a few years ago when I first saw a Munchkin cat. We've effectively amputated the legs from Dachshunds and cats and Bassets to a degree. And we'll talk a bit more about their sort of overall mental health a bit later. But from a physical point of view, Dachshunds have a very high rate of spinal disease and disc disease, and quite often have end up paralysed or need surgery for those. And because their legs are so little and twisted and deformed, they tend to get early onset joint problems because their legs aren't straight. Abnormal ears. In dogs, we've done this to lots of them. We've made big droopy ears. We've done that to rabbits. Lop ears are a big cause of physical problems in rabbits because they have no air supply in them, so they tend to get these waxy build-ups. They're much more prone to ear-base abscesses and so on. I'm really disappointed by... I love James Corden. I love the Peter Rabbit films. I've got 2 children myself. But the fact that we've now put a lop-eared rabbit in a film that's about wild rabbits is very, very disappointing. Half the rabbits in the UK are lop-eared or brachycephalic or both. But these ear problems can cause issues with things like chronic ear inflammation and so on, because the air can't get in there. And some breeds of dog, like the poodles, have really hairy ear canals. I've put the Scottish fold cat in there because Scottish fold cats are increasingly popular these days because everyone thinks they're very cute because they look like an owl and they've got this round little face. But there are loads of countries in the world that have quite rightly banned the breeding of Scottish folds because the X-ray next to that cat is the defect that causes their ears to fold is a genetic defect that causes these horrific skeletal problems all over them, sometimes from a really young age. You know, kittens that can't jump on and off the settee because they're in agony. So please, please, please do not buy a Scottish fold cat or any variety of cat with folded ears. Coats, again, like skin folds, I think they're often not considered to be extreme conformation, but for me, they really are. The picture in the bottom there is an Angora rabbit. Not that you could tell from that ball of fluff, but every vet in practice will have dematted a Persian. Where you've got dogs like this, we'll talk a bit more about that later, the dogs that can't communicate, they get fly strike, and then we create naked animals and then put clothes on them, and cats that can't go outside because they're prone to sunburn or they are, they're prone to injury. So I think we should stop tinkering with these things. There's a happy medium from short to slightly less short, and that's where we should keep them. These are the guys that everyone talks about in the media, mostly in dogs. I do get frustrated that people don't talk about it in other species, because we've definitely done it massively to cats and rabbits as well. These photographs are not difficult to come by. These animals are really, truly, truly suffering from multiple issues. You'll hear lots of people kind of infer that we can just take the bulldogs and pugs and so on that can breathe. I would like it if we lived in a world where we expected all of our animals to be able to breathe. But these animals have got lots of other problems. So if we just select from the ones that can breathe, firstly, you're going to take out half the population for breeding. But they've also got all of these other problems. And for me, ethically as a vet, the biggest problem there is the inability to reproduce, because about 80% of all of the main 3 popular brachycephalic dogs are born by elective caesarean section, and lots of them have artificial insemination and lots of them have pre-mate blood testing. And as vets, I think that's ethically questionable, because these breeds would not survive without veterinary intervention. So that's something that we need to look at. And I've talked to a lot of people about that it would be nice to have some policies put in place in some of the bigger practices to say that we're no longer going to do assisted fertility for those animals. As I say, it's not just cats and dogs and rabbits. We've done this bizarre stuff to all of these species. The Arab horses now are absolutely freakish, hairless varieties of lots of different animals that are fraught with issues. Pigeons that can't fly, fish that can't swim. It's almost as if people want to try and push these animals' bodies right to the limits of where they function or not. But as I said, for me, this is not just their physical suffering. This is really important. We want our pets to be happy and have happy, healthy lives with us, don't we? We want them to have the longest, happiest time with us that they can. And we know in ethics and welfare that being able to express natural behaviour, and we know this as humans, it's really important for our overall health and welfare. And we've created animals, so dogs who've got coats like this one at the top there, they can't make or avoid eye contact, they can't raise their tail. If they're docked, they can't do anything with that, they can't raise their hackles effectively. So these animals can be very difficult for other animals to read because they can't communicate. Lots of the dogs that have got wrinkly faces, like pugs and Shar-Peis, dogs are very, very, very expressive. They're really good at reading facial signals in humans as well as other dogs. And where we've made them with these expressions that they cannot change, it can be really problematic for usually because other animals can't understand what they're saying. But I think also where we've come to this place where we've got bulldogs, you'll see these photographs like this shared on social media as funny or cute, or dogs falling asleep sitting up. Please don't share those videos as cute or funny, because these are animals that cannot breathe while they're laying down. So they learn to fall asleep with holding hollow toys, or they sometimes prop themselves up on pieces of furniture. There's nothing funny about that. It's horrific. And that dog there also has cropped ears, so don't do that either. And I think that a lot of aggression that we see is probably because of either chronic pain or animals that are frustrated that they cannot express the normal behaviours that they want to do. I think cats particularly, now we've started changing cats' body shapes so much. They were largely unaffected for a long time because they're good at pest control. That's what we needed them for. But if we take the legs away from a cat, like this little munchkin at the top there, cats, we were always taught at university, cats live in 3D. They love to be up high. They're prey animals as well as predators. And it's really important we remember that. Cats need to be able to climb and escape and scratch posts high up and do all those things to be a cat. That's what being a cat is. And I think personally, you can just see my cat Stella in the tree there. She's showing off how incredibly well camouflaged normal natural moggies are. But we've made these animals into, personally I feel that those cats are incapable of having what I would accept to be a really nice life for a cat. I get very frustrated when I hear people say, oh, if you don't like exercise, get a bulldog. They don't like to exercise. It's not true. They really would love to exercise. They just can't. There's a federation of vets in Europe called FECAVA, and they have a T-shirt that they wear to veterinary conferences with a picture of a pug on it, and the tagline says, I would love to run if only I could breathe. And I think that's something that we shouldn't underestimate. I put on Facebook ages ago when I was writing one of these talks for a global conference. I asked my Facebook friends if any of them had children who had broken their legs and if I could have some photos. And I was inundated with photos of boys. Take from that what you will. This one girl, Sophie, had just broken her arm, but some of these children I've known for a long time. One's an absolutely world-class gymnast. And I said to the parents, was it easy in the 8 weeks that it took them to get back to doing what they wanted to do? And they all said, no, it was an absolute nightmare. Of course it was, because, the kids look happy in these photos because they've got a plaster cast that everyone can sign. But it was a nightmare because, of course, just because they cannot go and do gymnastics or trampolining or go to the park and play football with their friends, it doesn't mean that they don't want to. So let's not put that on our beloved pets that we think that they shouldn't be able to do what nature intended. So my big problem with breeds, in the extreme breeds, is that all the time that we're breeding for the way an animal looks, which is what breed standards are all about, you can never ever prioritize their health or their temperament. And for me, every single time an animal is reproduced, it should be to try and produce the healthiest version of that animal that's possible. So I think it's a problem now because we've created animals over the last 100 years that just wouldn't, and in some cases now could not survive in nature or exist in nature. And over the time I've been campaigning about this, lots of people have said to me, oh, you can't change breeds, that's what they're like. And the thing is, when the Kennel Club opened back in the late 1800s, there were 19 recognised breeds of dog. A lot of the cat breeds and dog breeds, now there's over 200 recognised in the UK, there's over 350, I think, recognised globally. You can't have a species with 350 different samples of it that all look different without some of them being at the verges of suffering. And we didn't have these breeds before. So why do we... for me, it's the welfare of the species that is important, not the breeds. So when you say you can't change breeds, I think some of these photos you will have probably seen online. They're absolutely shocking. The Persian at the top there is a show-winning Persian from the 1920s. And virtually every vet in the world would agree that these days we would just probably call it a domestic long hair. It's not brachycephalic, it isn't flat-faced, its nose isn't between its eyes, it doesn't have horrible skin folds or bulging eyes. These are really significant changes that we've already made to these animals. And if we can do that quickly, we can certainly improve their health and welfare that quickly too. Again, with the Siameses, they weren't these kind of really pointy, weird alien-looking things that they are today. With the dogs, again, German Shepherds, absolutely crippled, bunny hopping, these sloping back versions that we have today of this incredibly long-standing athletic working breed. They're almost unrecognisable from what they used to be. English Bull Terriers, no one really ever talks about, but why did we decide that they had to have these weird Roman noses where they've got these egg-shaped heads, which cause massive problems with their dental eruption and often require surgery just because we want them to have a domed head. Pugs, obviously, we've talked about already, but the painting at the top there is William Hogarth, and presumably he was a famous artist, so I assume that that's quite a good representation of his pug from back in the day. But now, again, we've got these dogs that have got these huge skin folds, bulging eyes, huge tongues, can't breathe. So we can change breeds. There's absolutely no doubt about that we can. So, but this is the thing for me. This is why I wanted to put this video on the website, is because I talk to vets and nurses all the time and nothing's changed. There are lots of things governments can do. There are lots of governments all over the world already that have legislation in place for these things, to ban breeds or ban features or ban ownership. There's lots of people trying different ways to tackle it. Personally, as I said, I have been campaigning about this for almost 3 decades. And if anything, it's got worse, because whatever the vets say all the time, that breeders and registry bodies are making a massive load of money out of these animals, they will continue to be bred. But this is the whole crux of it. This is the bottom line. This is you, everyone out there, could change this completely overnight. Because if you don't buy them, if you start to say to breeders, or preferably adoption centres, but if you want a puppy or a kitten because you want it to grow up with your children, or whatever your motivation is for buying that animal, is just look for ones that the parents have been health tested. Avoid the extremes. Everyone says I'm anti-pedigrees. Personally, I love dogs and cats. I don't care if they're breeds or not. They're beautiful animals. If you take out, I would probably say I wouldn't buy 20 or 30 dog breeds and probably 10 cat breeds. That leaves you loads of breeds that are proportionate and less diseased. All pedigree animals are inbred. I always wanted to say to clients, do you want an inbred animal or a pedigree one? And everyone says, oh no, I definitely don't want something that's inbred. But that's what pedigree animals are. They're inbred, which is why they have a lot of disease. But some of them are much healthier than others. So pick ones that are proportionate and they're not bald, and they've got a face and they've got legs and they've got a tail that they can wag and use for balance and all those things. Because as soon as the demand for those animals goes down, those animals will stop being produced and they will stop suffering. So let's all look after the ones. If you've already bought one, that's okay. You probably didn't know. So look after it to the best of your and your vet's ability. But please don't buy another one, because honestly, you could make a difference to this within 2 years. Everything in the whole world could change if everyone shared that message. As I said, these animals are beautiful animals. I've had moggies and mongrels all my life, and I would never get a pedigree. That's my personal choice. But when did we stop? When I was a kid, I'm 53 now. When I was a kid, you went to the RSPCA or your local adoption centre and you got a Heinz 57, as we called them. When did we stop being happy with just having healthy, happy family pets that are fit to live happy, healthy lives? So there you go. That's all I wanted to say. Hopefully I haven't been too long for you. But please do share this if you feel the same as me. I think the more people we can reach with messages like this, the better for the animals, because that's ultimately what all vets want. We're in it for animal welfare. And I know that virtually every pet owner or caregiver, whatever you want to call yourself, cares deeply about your animals. So let's try and make sure that the animals that you get next are really happy and healthy. Thank you very much.